the key in the pocket. The door clicked shut, leaving Akito in a silence he hadn't requested. In the center of his tiny new studio, surrounded by brown cardboard boxes that smelled of tape and dust, he realized he was finally alone. The key felt heavy in his palm, a cold piece of metal that promised freedom but whispered of responsibility. He looked at his reflection in the window, wondering if he looked as grown-up as the least suggested he was. The grocery store was a battlefield of choices and soaring prices. Akito stood in the produce aisle, staring at a head of cabbage like it was a complex calculus problem. He had $20 for the week, and the numbers in his head weren't adding up. He realized then that his mother's refrigerator hadn't been filled by magic, but by a series of deliberate, difficult decisions he was only now beginning to understand. Dinner was supposed to be a triumph, a spicy stir-fry he'd seen in a magazine. Instead, the fire alarm became his soundtrack. Akito stood in his cramped kitchen, waving a dish towel at a plume of gray smoke while his eyes watered. The adult life he had imagined involved gourmet meals and sophisticated wine, not a charred pan and the smell of burnt soy sauce. As night fell, the silence of the apartment became a heavy blanket. Akito sat on his thin floor mattress, watching the city lights flicker through the glass. He missed the muffled sound of the television downstairs and the scent of his father's coffee. For the first time, he understood that independence wasn't just about doing what you wanted. It was about being the only one there when the sun went down. While lugging a heavy bag of trash to the communal bin, Akito bumped into a boy about his age. The boy, Haruto, was struggling with a laundry basket that seemed to have a mind of its own. They shared a look of mutual exhaustion that broke the ice. "First week?" Haruto asked with a tired grin. Akito nodded, feeling a sudden, sharp spark of relief that he wasn't the only one drowning in the deep end. The university lecture hall was a sea of unfamiliar faces and tapping keyboards. Akito sat in the middle row, his notebook open to a blank page. The professor's voice droned on about economics, but Akito was thinking about laundry cycles and utility bills. He felt like a small boat in a very large ocean, trying to find a rhythm in a world that didn't wait for anyone to catch up. Monday arrived with the harsh reality of a budget. Akito sat at his small desk, his laptop glowing in the dark. He counted his remaining coins and typed into a spreadsheet, his brow furrowed in concentration. Adulthood, he realized, was less about grand gestures and more about the quiet discipline of making things last until the end of the month. A few nights later, Haruto knocked on the door with 2 cups of instant ramen and a sheepish smile. They sat on the floor of Akito's unfinished living room, slurping noodles and sharing stories of their failed attempts at proper living. In the steam of the cheap noodles, the apartment finally started to feel less like a box of boxes and more like a home. Akito stepped out onto his tiny balcony and called his mother. As her voice filled his ear, he didn't complain about the burnt food or the cost of cabbage. Instead, he told her he was doing well and thanked her for the sweater she'd tucked into his suitcase. He realized that growing up didn't mean pulling away. It meant reaching back with a new kind of gratitude. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. Akito took a deep breath of the cool evening air. He still had boxes to unpack, and his bank account was low, but the key in his pocket didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like a tool, ready to open whatever doors he chose to walk through next. He was an adult, not because he had it all figured out, but because he was finally willing to try.